that they hadn't already known the story of Dorothy Day very much. So many appreciated her story. It was mentioned that when Pope Francis came to the United States, he specifically mentioned both Dorothy Day and Thomas Merton as examples of great Americans, as well as Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King Jr. And what was noted was that both Thomas Merton and Dorothy Day had the relationships that were outside the norm of what would be expected as models of holiness. And the complexity of their lives, in a sense, is an encouragement to people, no matter what their situations, to recognize that we're all called to pursue holiness. This was connected in our discussion to Amoris Laetitia and a kind of seeming movement within the church to help people in very many different situations, but especially those that are related to their relationships and perceptions people have of those, towards a more fruitful dialogue. And the phrase was used of struggling together to find our path to Jesus. So, in fact, the comment was made, sometimes we love people like Dorothy Day more because of their past and their history, because as many group members said, love is messy, and humanity is messy. So a comment was made, quoting Thomas Merton, that holiness is not becoming less, but more human. And the desire was expressed that we need to hear more conversion stories, but to recognize that conversion is not just a one-time moment, but an ongoing experience throughout our lives, so that we can realize we are never beyond the point of redemption, but always drawn more fully to love. Our group also talked a lot about Dorothy Day and what an intense person she was, that she intensely sinned and intensely loved, like Mary Magdalene. And her suffering was intense, and being intense was a suffering for her, probably. And then when she became Catholic, she became intensely Catholic. And it's a great model for us, and we strive for that in the church, to not be lukewarm, but be more intense. She called others to an authentic living of the gospel, and was able to live on the very heights of her desires, not afraid, a very passionate person. And then we connected this to the feminine genius, which is not a problem to be solved, but a relationship to be experienced, and an opportunity to discover the truth about ourselves, even. When we speak from our heart and give as a gift, this removes fear and the relationship becomes possible. And the feminine genius capitalizes on complementarity. And we were noticing that in the gift of life, the gift of self of Dorothy Day. And then we turned to Mary Magdalene, and how many women in today's world have loneliness to deal with, and in their quest for God is like Mary Magdalene's and Dorothy Day's, so we can relate to them. In our world today, we tend to feel that we need to escape suffering, but we know in their examples that women who really entered into the emptiness and the loneliness that they experienced, that they will find God. And this is an avenue to peace. We can think about we can think about this as an invitation to be alone with Jesus. And then we talked about Dorothy Day's farm, that there are people today who are rediscovering Dorothy Day's contribution to Catholic social work, and we all have that moment of conversion. And the fact that she is now called venerable can be a motivation for those who have sinned, so that they can see, I also have a chance. Somebody in modern times, these kind of modern sins, which really are ancient old sins too, we don't see it that way always. We can relate to that. And this love is possible for us too. Also the fact that Mary Magdalene recognized Jesus by his voice indicates an intimate relationship with Jesus that we all desire. Okay. And then we mentioned the interpretation of Scripture is not always that Mary Magdalene is the same woman who is mentioned in all those situations in the Gospel. And sometimes we think seven demons. It could be symbolic language. It might not really mean 7 demons, things like that. That we should be careful about when we're teaching. And sometimes we think about Mary Magdalene as the one from whom 7 devils were cast out, and we miss the idea that she was the first witness of the resurrection. And we sort of concentrate on the sin instead of concentrating on this tremendous gift that she was given and her prophetic role in salvation.